Hey guys, welcome back to The Clinical Trials Guru. Again, it's theclinicaltrialsguru.com where I bring you content on a regular basis. I'm trying to get 24/7, at least as far as accessibility. So get me on Cyberdust, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, email Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Text me 949-415-6256. Call me at that same number 949-415-6256. However it is you want to talk, Snapchat, whatever it is, I don't care. I'm also coming out with a LinkedIn group shortly. Today's video slash podcast is, at least I'm going to try to keep it on the short side. Okay, we're going to get into three topics, three questions that I got that I didn't cover in my last podcast, which I thought were pretty good, and I wanted to spend some more time. I didn't want to rush through them in the last podcast to keep that one short, so I'm making this other podcast. So the three topics are going to be, the first topic's an interesting informed consent issue and maybe an ethical dilemma that a principal investigator is facing. The second issue is in regards to what is the best kind of software to store and manage your study participant database, your calendars that you can share with your all your researchers at the clinic. So patient database, shared calendar. What kind of databases can you use, basically? Okay, and my answer is gonna probably surprise you, although it shouldn't surprise many of you, but it probably will. And the third one was actually about something related to recruitment. And I'm gonna have to pull it up here soon, but I'll remember it as we go along. So the first one, I got a question from someone who will remain anonymous, of course. And by the way, all you guys are going to be anonymous. So, hey Dan, a quick question regarding a real situation. Is it okay to leave out of the ICF, which is the informed consent form, one or a couple of possible risks and just mention that other risks may be discussed with a study doctor? A study doctor has a very strong concern that there is a very realistic long-term complication as a result of participation in the study. She is discussing that possibility with subjects while consenting. However, this specific risk never has been listed in the informed consent. Please note the PI is actively participating in an ICF drafting and approval process. Do you think it is right? Hope to hear your and others' opinion. So, obviously I don't know the specifics, and I'm not a clinician. I'm not even going to try to get into that. And this really depends what phase it is. If it's a phase 3, that means that they had the phase 1 and the phase 2 studies to gather enough data. And for some reason, the fact that it's not listed on the informed consent means an IRB approved that. They approved that omission from the ICF. And the question is why? And you can speculate as to why. Maybe there's not enough data showing that it's a possible risk. Maybe it's just this particular PI's opinion, and he has every right, not only the right, but the responsibility to tell his patients that are consenting what he thinks about the study drug. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be in the informed consent. On the other hand, it might need to be in there, and just to be on the safe side, if I was your PI, because he is part of the committee that drafts the informed consents, he may have a conflict of interest that may be perceived as such later by a regulatory agency. They may ask him, why didn't you speak up at that time? Or him or her. Why didn't you speak up at the time? So just to be on the safe side, I would set up, if I were the PI, a teleconference between him, the IRB, and the sponsor, and the CRO, if there is one, and talk about his reasoning for why he thinks it should be in there. and why he's telling all his study participants during the consenting process that this risk is a possibility from the IP. Um, this teleconference should be, it doesn't have to be recorded, but someone should be taking notes to have some kind of proof that it did occur and that your PI did his part to bring up his concerns. So that's what I would do. And if you can't find a mutual time for the IRB and the sponsor and the PI to all meet together, the PI should call the IRB and the sponsor separately and have separate discussions. That's what I would do. Now, it could just be that there's not enough data to support it and the IRB was okay with that. So there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of ways this can go. And yeah, just for, to keep this video short, those are my two suggestions, or those are my suggestions and my two reasons for why the ICF does not have that particular adverse event. Okay, next question. It's in regards to what kind of software should we be using at a research clinic? And I'm finding it here. Yeah. Hey Dan, so any advice for what kind of database we can be using, such as for electronic medical records, patient database, having a shared calendar, something that we can all collaborate on at the clinic? We have a somewhat small clinic with about 5 coordinators, 1 PI, and what would you suggest? So here's what I would do. There's a lot of software out there that is designed and specifically for clinical trials. There's one, I'm not going to mention their names. I have nothing against them, but they are very expensive, and I've never used, well, I take that back. I have used their product once. I didn't pay for it. I got a free trial, and it was something like $400 a month. Those make sense for a really large clinic, okay? Like I'm talking 20 coordinators or more. For in your case, what I would do, and this is where I say this answer would surprise most people, I'm all about bootstrapping. I'm all about using free resources when you can. And if you use my strategy, it's actually HIPAA compliant too, because you're not putting any identifying information for patients. Now, with that being said, this is not an electronic medical record system. For that, you need to actually follow the federal guidelines for EMRs. Okay, that's totally separate. If you're using electronic medical records, you have to comply with that, with those systems. I know very little about those, but when it comes to managing your own site and having your own patient database, use something like Excel, something as simple as an Excel spreadsheet that the site director or the team leader keeps a file of, and anytime there's a new patient come in your clinic, add them to there. Now, in order to keep it HIPAA compliant, you can just put initials and phone number and diagnosis. Okay. Another thing I use as far as the shared calendar is Google Calendar, Google Drive. Google Drive is fantastic. I've used it with much success at some of my smaller clinics. You can put patient initials on certain dates, and you can write what study they're coming in for. This works really well for small clinics. So you put patient initials, the visit that is going to be occurring, so like C-L screening on October 1st, and you can even put the time. Everyone who you give access to in your Google Drive, so in your case like 5 or 6 people, will be able to see that and will be able to schedule and coordinate their schedules accordingly, so that you don't put too many subjects or study participants on one day because someone didn't know that these people are being scheduled. So using Google Calendar, and of course use the initials. You never want to put the patient's full name on these things, even though Google Drive, Google claims it's secure and it's HIPAA compliant, but just to be on the safe side, initials, visit, and study. Okay. And if you guys have acronyms for the studies, even better. Most studies have an acronym, even better. Should this get in the wrong hands, your Excel spreadsheet is just to have the patient's names and phone numbers easily accessible for you. Although if you have an electronic medical record system, you can use that, but it's more complicated because each user needs privileges to get into that thing, whereas the study participants that you would put in your Excel spreadsheet are people who have already indicated that they are interested in being contacted about studies. So definitely check with your own site SOPs for that, and have processes and procedures in place should you ever get audited by a regulatory agency. The processes and procedures are in place, and make sure that you are following your own procedures, okay? And related to following is following up, all right? This is especially important when we're dealing with and we are facing the present situation, which is September 2014, where there is a low study supply out there. Okay, so you have a lot of research clinics competing to get the same studies from a few sponsors who are actually willing to do studies at this time. So what do you do? What do most sites do? Most sites attempt an email and a phone call. The sponsor usually they won't answer the phone, so you'll leave a voicemail and you'll send an email, and that's it. That's where they stop, and that's not what you should be doing. Okay, you should be calling every day, finding different people you can talk to until you get concrete information about whether your site has a realistic chance of participating in the study or not. So until you hear sponsor telling you they're not needing any more additional sites at this time, but we will put you in our database, and make sure you get put in their database. Until you hear that, don't stop calling, okay? And even after you hear that, still keep regular follow-ups, like once a month would be ideal. You don't want to annoy these people either. Once a month with an email and maybe a nice handwritten letter from your clinic adds a little extra touch. You do what you can in this market right now, okay? But follow-up does not mean one email and a phone call and that's it. No, follow-up means every day until you hear from somebody, and if you're getting the runaround, find other people to talk to until you get some solid information, right? That's what you guys should be doing. There was a question on recruitment that I am not able to pull up right now, but when I do, I'll do another video on that, okay? So anyways, thank you guys for watching. This is Dan from theclinicaltrialsguru.com, and I wanted to give my Clinical Trial Guru producers an acknowledgement here. It's South Coast Clinical Trials, Sarah Elizabeth Siegler, Resolve Research Solutions, Accurate Clinical Trials, Erdhart Clinical Trials, PTNR, Patrick Stone, Darshan Kulkarni, Biopharm System, Zymewire, Mozio, St. Paul Medical Research Center, Atria Clinical Trials, Phlebotomy Services LLC, and I think there's a few more. I don't want to leave them off. We've had a few recent add-ons here. Rheumatic Disease Clinical Research Center, Clinexus Research LLC, Coastal Connecticut Research LLC, Atria Clinical Research Management. Thank you guys all for watching, listening, interacting with me. Keep your questions coming however you want to send them to me. Just get them out to me. Dan from theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Take care.